Hi everyone, it's Sandra out with Gilligan in his outdoor location. You've probably heard about the atmospheric river that hit Vancouver Island and Vancouver. You can see how Gilligan puddles around the edge here, but he's just fine. And I'm just gonna lift his lid and make sure that water runs down the back of him, because I was getting puddling in the bottom of him because these shredded leaves take longer than I'm used to absorb water. So I came out here, and obviously I've been adding more worms from those muddy worm castings, and so I wanted to make sure that I have no further puddling. But of course, every time I add worms, it comes in with this beautiful partly finished vermicompost, which is moist. So Gilligan has the beginnings of, I'm not going to call it a moisture problem, but with pumpkin season coming up, I don't want it to get any worse. So I've probably added, I don't know, probably 3,000 worms right now. Here's some right here, just playing in the leaves. Beautiful, healthy worms. I love giving them this natural environment to live in. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be giving Gilligan a lot more neighbors, a lot. But first I want to just check on the moisture conditions, because what I'm adding today is very moist. So as I dig down, I'm noticing that, okay, this is an old feeding zone. I can just dig with my hands. I've got gloves on because I knew this would be a messy job. What I'm noticing is the worms are distributed throughout, which is great. We've had a few minus or sub 50 degree temperature, which is 10 degrees Celsius nights. So yeah, look at the water. So I've been having the heat on Gilligan at night. And so even though this is puddling down the bottom, this is not food scrap puddling. This is just from when we wet these leaves down, the water kind of ran through the bedding and didn't absorb. These leaves, you can see right adjacent to the water, the leaves are still pretty dry. And so what I have to keep doing is pulling up these moist leaves and adding them to the top so that the moisture eventually will all be absorbed. I'm not pleased that this has happened because I want to get Gilligan up and running and not have any standing water at the bottom. But as you can see, oh, did I grab them? Yeah, the worms are right down there in the water and they are just fine. But I don't like it. I actually think that Gilligan might be tilted a little bit than he has been in the past, because the water is only on this lip right here. I have checked all the way around, and it's only at this near side, which I guess is a good thing. See, there's worms right down in the moist leaves. I suppose it's a good thing that it's right where I can see it. All right, so because I've still got this standing water, I need to get something to absorb this, and the leaves are obviously not going to do a fast enough job. So I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to get something to absorb it, and then I'm going to give Gilligan all those new neighbors. All right, so first I got to get some dry bedding. All right, so I found a little bit of cardboard. We're moving, so all our cardboard's gone to packing boxes. But I'm going to, like Jane at Rockin' Worms, I'm going to stand up the cardboard to act like a fan to wick moisture out. These egg cartons are going to be right down at the bottom where this moisture is starting to accumulate, but they will similarly soak up a lot of the moisture. While I paused the video, Landon did tell me that Gilligan is slightly tilted. So actually that's worked in my favor, that I know that there's moisture in the bin and that that side over there, closer to the house, is going to be drier. All right, this may or may not be enough to address this problem because we don't have a lot of evaporation going on right now. Despite the sunshine today, we are headed into our cooler fall temperatures. All right, so I pushed the wet soaking wet leaves over on the top there, and I'm going to bring forward some of the damp but not soaking wet leaves. Oh, and lots of the worms. They're finding each other, which is great. A big system like this, it's hard to create, a wedge system or anything like that, unless I fed consistently only in one spot. And I've been distributing it. So Gilligan's worms have had to find each other in this potpourri of leaves, but I'm sure they're going to love it because they're very insulating with all this air. There's no risk of anaerobic despite the moisture. And as I go through it, I'm getting the slight smell of fungus. So that, as you know, is ideal. All right, so I've got those really moist leaves there, and I'm going to be dumping, I'm afraid, some more moist material here at this near end. So I'm going to be adding Gilligan's worms. Now these worms were the worms that I took out, and I'll post the link in the description, when I harvested those muddy castings. As I pulled out worms from those muddy castings a couple of months ago, I put them into 2 styrofoam totes. Actually have some dry brown paper on the top, which is great for this system. And so these bins are absolutely chock-a-block full of leaves that I gave the worms back in like 2 months ago. So the leaves have been greatly worked on by these worms, but chock-a-block full of worms as well. They've been sitting out in the sun, so they're obviously hiding, but you can see that this material is moist, and there's Gilligan's worms going home. There's going to be, I would say, several thousand of them in here, because these systems, not only did I put several thousand in, but they've been parked in my greenhouse for the last several months, which is lovely warm temperatures, and as we know, warm temperatures stimulate worms to breed. I'm trying to keep them on top of this dry brown paper because, like I said, this material going in is similarly moist, as you can see, which is great. The last thing I wanted was for these beautiful worms to dry out in our greenhouse, so I made sure that I was always adding good moisture to them. You can see them, they're just lovely and happy, and this material has already been worked on for several months. Gilligan is going to have what I would consider his full complement of worms back. I don't know if I'll be adding any more worms to him over the winter. Yeah, this material is pretty much finished castings between the larger lumps of avocado pits and the odd leaf stem. So, but they're breeding as well. I see cocoons. So these worms will be eager to get out into fresh leaf material, but also fresh food. I'm a little worried still about the moisture because the second bin of worms that I have to add is equally moist. And I don't want to build up Gilligan's bedding too much with more of these drier leaves. I suppose I can pull in a few, but for the most part, I'm just adding very moist vermicompost all over again. There's a little avocado shell. So I think it's light enough now that I can just tip this container into Gilligan. Landon and I will make sure that these containers get rinsed over our garden, so the worms that are left in here, and there will be worms left in here, will find a safe place to go all winter. So this is just one of the 2 containers of Gilligan's worms going back in here. So I think what I need to do is to add a layer of drier leaves before I get into adding the second group of Gilligan's worms. So let me add some leaves and get the drier ones from around the back. There we go. Gilligan's going to have quite the hump. There we go. All right. Now let me get my second container, don't bury my fork, of Gilligan's leaves. So this tub is even more full, but you know, I have nowhere else to put these worms. These worms will be the same worms I took out of Gilligan because, you know, worms live multiple years. So these worms would have been in Gilligan before, and now they're returning to the same system. Obviously, they don't know that they're in the same system in terms of, you know, I'm sure the bedding is the biggest change that a worm experiences day to day. But the fact that these worms are coming home kind of makes me feel good. Also, what makes me feel good is this system does not appear to be as moist. It is certainly moist enough, but it is not dripping wet like the first bin that I added in here. So on top of the dry leaves it goes, all of these worms going back into Gilligan. Now, our house is going to be up for sale again, and I want to make sure that this worm bin can be moved. And what I demonstrated was that I can divide Gilligan up if need be, which is what I did, into multiple totes and sent them away. My sister took care of all of these worms all summer, and they are coming home. So, you know, if you've got a big system and you may need to move it even in a hurry, as long as you have other totes, like I had all these styrofoam totes, they worked to keep these worms safe all summer. And you know, the downside is it created numerous worm bins that require care. Gilligan is far easier to take care of because he's all one system. So that's why we've reinstituted Gilligan now, because with our house still going to be up for sale, it is going to be increasingly difficult for me to take care of all of these separate worm bins. I'm not set up to do that. I don't have the, you know, the tiered, you know, tote systems like some of the breeders have, those rack systems with lots of mortar trays or anything. So Gilligan is my best bet for taking care of numerous amounts of worms. Oop, and there's some leaves still. My sister was putting leaves into the worm bins to try to soak up extra moisture. And look at this vermicompost. Gilligan, this finished vermicompost is so microbially rich. The juices that drip down from this into the leaves that I added more recently when I stocked up Gilligan are going to inoculate those leaves and cause the system to turn over more rapidly. All right, this is a very muddy Gilligan looking, but you can see the worms are home, they're doing fine, and my goal now is just to let this system rest, probably for quite a while, but check on the moisture. But I'm not going to mess with these worms for quite a while. I'm just going to let them settle in. In fact, it's a sunny day. I'm going to leave the lid off, help the worms settle in, and then get on to a regular feeding schedule. Thanks for checking in on Gilligan. Everyone take care. Bye for now.